back. My partner is Ziggy, and I'm presenting on Dolly and the Persistence of Memory. So, the environment of the persistence of memory. He finished painting in August 1931 when he was just 27 years old. It was at the height of the Surrealist movement at the time. A little bit prior to this, on December 28th, 1929, he got kicked out of his family's house in Figueres, a Catalonian city north of Barcelona, and they settled in a small fishing village called Port Ligat, also in Catalonia. They didn't have much money at the time, so they lived in a single-room fishing shack, which was the location of his painting of this. The artistic movement at the time. So, as I said earlier, Dali was part of the Surrealist movement, which basically consisted of two primary things. Your unconscious reflected in the painting, and it was a commentary on misguided rationalism, which is essentially the misguided rationalism of Europe, which the Surrealist painters thought led to the catastrophes of World War One. At the time, the Surrealists were experimenting with automatism, which is, as I mentioned earlier, it's unconscious reflected in the piece of art, which they thought was the only way to truly escape the cultural, intellectual, and historical constraints, which they thought would basically take the artist's true creativity and throw it onto the painting. And these three artists down here are not Dali, but other Surrealist painters of the time. So this one is Giorgio de Cicero, which was a painter and writer. This is Max Ernst, a painter, sculptor, graphic artist, and poet. And this is Joan Miró, which is a painter and sculptor. And they actually have a Joan Miró museum here in Barcelona that you should check out. Okay, so Dali, when he painted this, was practicing his new technique called the paranoid critical method, which is essentially he would trigger this is a little bit difficult to understand, so I'm going to go slow. So you trigger a paranoid state within himself, which is basically the feeling that you're being manipulated or controlled or targeted by some other force. And as a result of this, your identity just becomes deconstructed, and all that's left for you to throw onto your artwork is complete, true subjectivity, because your mind state isn't controlling any of your creative output. Then I have a little flowchart here to make it a little bit easier to understand. So paranoia, which led to the deconstruction of identity, which led to subjectivity in his art. Okay. And Dali's words in his new technique are actually very famous. And he said, "I believe that the moment is near when by a procedure of active paranoid thought, it will be possible to systematize confusion and contribute to the total discrediting of the world of reality." And this technique is also very related to what I was talking about earlier, the misguided rationalism that Surrealists thought led to World War I, which was one of the artistic movement's main tenets. Technique. So, here's a little painting. I know it's a little bit hard to see because it's small, but just bear with me. So first I would like to talk about the meticulous detail. So Dali has been known for his meticulous detail throughout many of his paintings, which you can see in this through the tiny ants on the clock, the seascape background, and the detail within the mountains. The clocks themselves look very real, this three-dimensional creation of space. And then he also used shading to create a color fade, which you can see in the sky. The sky kind of goes blue to yellow, then back to blue, and you don't really know where the sky is fading into the ocean in the background. And then he used similar with lines other than the mountain and the eyelashes and the figure. So this one's a little bit tricky because he did a lot of shading and he didn't leave a lot of sketch marks on it. But you can see very similar with lines throughout it if you look very closely. It's a little bit hard to see here, other than in the mountain and in the eyelashes of the figure. So the eyelashes and the figure are a bit difficult to see. If you take your head and you turn it like this, you can see it's kind of a sideways portrait of Dali. You can see the nose and the eyes pretty evidently in his head kind of shaped around, and Dali actually used this kind of portrait, I would call it, of himself in many of his other pieces. Next, he used warm, saturated colors, which was basically the use of yellow, gold, black, brown, which you can kind of see around here. In all throughout the piece, it's a saturated look, and it makes the piece feel very kind of homely in a way. And then next, juxtaposition of smooth and jagged surfaces. This is pretty easy to discern. You have the tables pretty jagged. The mountains in the background are jagged. The tree holding the clock is very jagged. And then you've got the smooth surfaces, which are the clocks and the top of the table as opposed to the side of the character on the ground, which kind of almost looks like it's swimming or moving, which leads me to my next topic, which was movement, which is evident in the clocks and the figure on the ground, as they almost look like they're melting before your eyes in real time. Okay, and then what part of the world inspired this landscape? I talked about this earlier. It was Port Ligat, where he stayed, or where he moved to after he got kicked out of his house in Figueres. It was, and specifically, it was the coastal cliffs of Catalonia, specifically Cap de Cruz, which was a peninsula near Port Ligat, where he moved after he got kicked out. You can see a triangular shadow when we go back, right here under the clock hanging on the tree. And art historians think that was Mount Penny, which was the mountain behind his new home in Port Ligat, which you can see actually here, which was a view of Cadaqués with a shadow of Mount Penny, which he painted after moving to the town. You can see the little Port Ligat here, and of course he's painting this from the mountain itself. Thank you.